Hi, and welcome to another episode of Lifestyle Unlimited, where we believe you should live your lifestyle in an unlimited fashion. So, Peter, today let's talk about passive real estate as opposed to like active right now real estate. And what's your opinion about those?
Well, I think the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is there's many different ways to look at it. I want to hit all the angles, but passive could mean the difference between like owning rental properties and maybe, which is obviously more on the passive side, to doing fix and flips, which is obviously more an active side. But passive could be like totally passive. It could be like investing your money with someone else in this business, like into a fund or into someone versus being very, very hands-on. But here's the kind of the thing I like to start out with. What a great business to be in that you can do that. I mean, think about how many businesses like that you can do that with. Not very many. Not very many businesses give you the ability to do both passive or active. So before deciding, I think, what side of the equation you fall on, I think the first thing that somebody has to do is just figure out why they want to be in this business. And not even why they just want to be in this business, but what really is the outcome? What's the goal? And I think depending on what the goal is and what the outcome is, that's really what you got to decide. Like for instance, let's say you're listening to us and you have $500 to work with. And you're trying to figure out, well, should I do this passively or actively? I'm thinking, that passively, that's not going to do anything for you. You're going to need to get into the active side of this. And by the way, active side, another great thing about real estate, doesn't mean you have to be like the head honcho investor. Active side could mean you go work for someone. You go partner with someone. But I could tell you, if you really don't have money to your name and you want to start generating money, or if you have very little money to your name, I think you definitely have to be more on the active side.
It's funny that you say that. So from the active side, you're getting like more like bigger chunks of money quickly.
For sure.
Right? So like if you do a fix and flip, you do a wholesale deal, you're getting some money quickly.
Yep.
Like what a lot of people do, including myself, is you take that money, right, from those deals and invest it into more of the passive deals. Now, I've done a lot more active deals than passive, but I do like both to a certain degree.
Well, like what kind of passive deals are you talking about? Are you talking about the creative financing ones?
Yeah. So, like I like to do owner finance. Right? So I've bought a couple properties, owner finance. Generally, you're looking at a down payment.
Yep.
Right? You might be looking at it that it actually needs work, which is weird about passive because some people just look at it as active versus passive. Sometimes passive deals are a combination of both.
Right.
So you can combine those two, but I take the money sometimes that I make from that to pay your bills, plus then take it and get into a passive deal, which gives you what's called mailbox money. Talk a little bit about somebody that doesn't know. What do you think mailbox money is?
Well, mailbox money is another way of saying receiving money based upon work that you've done in the past. Like mailbox money could be, like you said, your creative financing deals. You're gonna have to do the work of it up front. There's no question. There's work. You got to find the deal. You got to negotiate it. You got to structure it. Then you got to sell the deal. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're not having a realtor sell yours on the back end, or are you?
Well, I'm not even selling them.
Well, how are you getting the people in
Rent.
them? Well, rent them. You still got to. That takes effort.
Yep.
Right. Doesn't happen overnight. So basically, mailbox income is you put the effort in up front, and then in a perfect case scenario, and this is why I know this goes against what all the gurus and what you believe in. They're like you got to get into the rentals, you got to get into long-term holds, you got to do this. I don't disagree with that. But to me, it always sounds a lot easier. Like, for instance,
it's not easy.
Well, out of how many, percentage-wise, out of all the ones you have, how many do you have some issues with?
Every one of them. Well, because it comes down to this, like you have one, and let's say you've got all your money into it. Like this has happened actually a couple times. For some reason, I got terrible luck with heat and air conditioning units. And I swear to goodness, every time I've bought one, put somebody in it, the freaking heat and airs went out in the house.
And how far does that set you back in terms of months?
Well, it sets you a long time back because you're looking at $5,500, maybe $6,000 to put a new unit in. And if they're only paying you $500, $600, $700 a month in rent.
That's a year.
I know. But you are building equity, though. So essentially, they're paying for a lot of things like the insurance, right? Or the taxes for the property, or paying for some of your maintenance. So the other way to look at it is long term from now, they're paying your equity, but you're not necessarily cash flow positive all the time in the first 5 years. So it just, you don't want it to be your last dollar. Let's put it that way. You don't want to put all your money into a rental and say, okay, this rental house is going to give me the income that I need to pay all my bills. Right. Because inevitably, what's going to happen is something's going to go wrong, and you're going to have to dig back deep and get into the pockets of that deal to make sure you're continuing to get money. But I will tell you what's really nice is from about the 1st to the 15th, for me every month, I kind of like having this little these monies come in, you know what I mean? In and out, in and out. Luckily, you know, I have people that pay. That's huge. But I will say, out of all my favorite things, I like active deals better than passive. For me, it was a way to park some money that I was making and be able to write it off on taxes. Right. And I hate to... Well, that's the true reason, actually, that I went a little bit passive, too, is I'm trying to park money and take some tax advantages. Not that I absolutely love it, but when you're making a certain amount of money, you either pay taxes on it or you spend it on something that you get tax breaks on.
Well, there's no question, and I agree. I agree with what you're saying. That seems to be the big kind of hook that people talk about long term. And again, I'm not saying long term is not a good strategy. I'm just saying kind of where I'm at right now, it's not the best strategy. Let's use your example. Okay, you do this, you structure this deal, right? Mm-hmm. You get a tenant in there, your AC goes down, you're down $5 to $6K on a $500 to $600 a month, so that's realistically almost a year of rental income, right?
Yep.
And that's barring they don't move out 6 months down the road and you now got another 2 months of sitting empty. But let's just play it out. So your cash flow could be eroded pretty quickly, right? But you're right, everyone in the long-term play then comes back and tells me the exact same thing. But Pete, here's what you're not getting on what you're doing. You're not capturing the appreciation. If I sit on this house for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, this $100,000 home could be $150,000 home, $200,000 home. But this is my argument to that. Think about we take the same home, right? Or let's say another house you find for $100,000, right? It's going to take you years, like maybe a decade, maybe 2 decades, to have that sucker appreciate 50%. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty darn good appreciation. That's aggressive. Let's face it, in the market right now, a lot of this appreciation that was captured is gone. Like, it's going backwards. But let's just play it out. Let's say consistent appreciation, right? And you got yourself $50,000 appreciated over 2 decades or a decade on a $100,000 deal. I'd rather go find a house for $100,000, right? And go flip it, maybe fix it, flip it, make a $40,000 or $50,000 on it in 6 months. Mm-hmm. Don't you think that's like better to capture that appreciation?
No.
Why is that not better?
I think it's better to do both. And I'll tell you why. Because when you're looking at 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you got to keep doing your deals whenever I don't have to, because I'm saving for my future. So for me, I look at it more of like, this is a 401k, this is an IRA, this is another vehicle to take money now that's going to be something for my future.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But, I lump that in with the same philosophy people say, I'm just saving for a rainy. People that have traditional jobs, right? What are they saying all the time? Oh, I'm just stocking money away until I retire. Because when I retire, I'm going to really live it up. I'm going to travel. The wife and I are going to see the world. We won't have kids at home. And then they get to that retirement age and the health is not there. They're not that worried. That $100,000 is no longer that important. I don't know. I get the philosophy.
I'm doing all the fun things now.
Well, that's the key. And I think that's where I think the more active. Now, look, there are downsides to the active strategy also. Mm-hmm. Let's face it. Let's hit in a couple of those. Like, for instance, let's face it, like, if you think about it on your owner finance deal, what is like the worst thing AC 5,000-6,000. Give me like, I don't even know, what's the worst thing that can happen on that deal right now today? Like, what is the absolute worst thing?
That I've got owner finance payments to make. And
they're gone.
And somebody's not in there paying those payments.
Right, okay.
Because I've got a payment sitting here with an owner finance deal.
Right.
So that money, I have to pay that lien holder.
So money going out.
Yep. So then once you put somebody in there, technically their rent or their whatever for the property overpays that. So when this person moves out and you don't have this income coming in,
Right.
I still got to pay this over here.
Well, and this is where I agree.
So you've got to be careful, because if you don't got the money to make sure in an owner finance deal
Right.
or a sub 2 that you can make those payments no matter what, you could foreclose, which is not good either.
But then you're still not getting the money during that time. And then you got to get another tenant person in there. So this is where I agree. This is where I believe that the long-term hands-off is actually better than the short-term fix and flip, let's say, because it's a lot riskier on the fix and flip. I mean, it is, I hate to say it, but especially in the crushing market we're in right now, I mean, I'm stroking some $30,000, $40,000 checks. For you to lose $30,000 to $40,000 on that owner finance deal, that's like very difficult.
No, the house would have to burn down, and and
Yeah.
then I don't have insurance. Or, I mean, honestly, like, look at it this way. This is saying with regular tenants. Okay, regular tenants that maybe mess some things up, right?
Right.
But there are plenty of horror stories out there where you've got a
Oh, yeah.
tenant and they do $40,000 worth of damage to the house.
Could happen.
It happens a lot, and there's no insurance policy to fix that.
Okay. So there is some potentially pretty big.
risk, just the same.
It's risk. But again, even though I'm more of the short-term play, active play investor, and I know in the end you are too, I would still say that the long-term play is less risky. Because yes, you could have that outlier of that $20,000, $30,000, somebody goes haywire, but in the end, most of the time, your biggest exposure is the AC, $4,000 to $5,000, non-paying tenant, which means you only have to make
Water
$1,000.
leak.
A water leak. So the overall the exposure on that side is a lot less. And you're also right. Let's face it. This is why I said in the beginning, the goal is to figure out what your goal is, right? Let's face it. To make an extra $50,000 in the fix and flip, you got to do an extra deal. I mean, so the bottom line is this: the fix and flip strategy is one. When we say active, it is active.
Very, very active.
Yeah.
A wholesale deal's active. Honestly,
All those strategies.
technically, when you're in and out of a deal in less than 6 months, all of those are that way, right?
There's no question. So to now, again, my argument against that, and I know it's not the most solid argument, is that you could pile up some serious money over 5, 10, 20, 30 years, and what would take you for a long time to do in there, you could just pile up here. But you're right, there's more tax consequences in this. But I really do think in the end, like you and I, obviously you and I have our favorites because we've been doing this long enough. And when you do something long enough, of course you're going to move the needle. I don't care if you're playing basketball long enough or if you're fixing cars long enough. Sooner or later, your needle's going to move towards something that you like better and that makes sense for you. For us, obviously, even though you're on both sides of the equation, you're more obviously.
I mean, we're talking 1% to 99%.
Exactly. So, but in the end, I do think it's a personal decision. I think the great thing about this business is that not only both are possible, but the bottom line is this: if you're set up correctly, if you have the right wherewithal financially, if you have the right wherewithal understanding, like the difference between that, here you need property managers, here you need contractors, blah, blah, blah. And if you could set up a good enough system, the good thing is this: both are possible.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, not only both are possible, but whatever ultimately your goals end up being, whatever your dreams are, whatever your long-term play needs to be. And let's face it, this is the one piece I want to hit this before we conclude. There's some ultimate passive side. I mean, we're talking about right now, the examples that you've been using is kind of owner finance, and I would argue owner finance, you're still kind of hands-on, at least on the front end.
You're a lot of hands-on, and
Yeah.
you can make really bad decisions there. I mean,
That's right.
I've got at one house that is a really bad decision. Problem is, I'm not taking the loss at day one. I'm taking a loss every month for the
Over a
next
period
10
of time.
years.
So yeah, so it's hands-on.
But I do like the idea of just getting rid of it. But now I can't
Now
get
you're
rid of
stuck.
it. I'm stuck with the ugly duckling.
So you can, but again, my point, the point there was that even though you consider that more of a passive, there's the ultimate passive also in real estate. You could literally, let's say you're got money and you don't want to get on the active at all, and listening to Julie, you're like, well, I don't even want to get involved with this whole front end structuring deals and potentially bad AC conditions. You may be thinking, well, hey, I got $1 million to play with or $100,000 to play with. is it possible in real estate to just be 100% hands off?
Absolutely.
And the answer is yes, absolutely. You know, for instance, there's what are called real REITs, real estate investment trusts, where you literally give your money to a professional organization that then that pools the money. So what that does is it spreads the risk. It pools that money and invests into multiple deals. You know, you can give that money. You know, you can even locally, you could find somebody that you're like, you know.
A regular investor.
Yeah, a regular investor that you may see, you know, he's got rehabs going all over the place. You've checked him out, checks out good credentially. I guarantee you, if you approach that investor, guess how I know? We're always looking for money. That investor would be open to utilizing your money. So there's actually different levels. And there's different levels of active, right? You could do 3 rehabs at the same time, which means you're like, you better be full-time in this sucker. Or you could do 1 a year, which means you could probably have a regular job and just do 1 a year on the side and no harm, no foul. So there's different levels of passive or active. But in conclusion, here's the reality. The great thing is you could do both. And the great thing is this, when you truly analyze what your goals are, what your ambitions are, what your objectives are, and how you are personally currently set up, you can get the great benefit of this business both on the active side and the passive side, right?
Absolutely.